let's get started because everyone else who signed up told me they couldn't make it. For most of them,
Okay.
it's midnight where they live. So they were like, I don't really want to stay up that late. That's okay. I understand. So we just won't worry about that. Okay, let me get my slides up. Okay, so just want to welcome you again to this webinar. It's called the 5 Keys to Reversing Insulin Resistance and Keeping Away from a Lifetime of Chronic Diseases. And I know that you have probably seen one of my posts somewhere, because I really want to get this information out to people. It's brand new. No one's talking about it yet, and I'll go on to with I'll tell you more about that later. But I feel like there's a lot of diabetics out there that are just frustrated with everything that's going on in their lives, and that things are not progressing in the right way, right? So, all right, so you are in the right place. If you're tired of having medication shoved down your throat, just constantly put on more medications or different medications to try and help your numbers. Or if you feel like diabetes is a life sentence, what you've been told to do by your doctor or nutritionist just doesn't seem to be working, or your diabetes complications might be getting worse, you can't maintain a healthy weight, uh, those are all reasons to be here. In the next 45 minutes, give or take a few, maybe more like an hour, we'll see. We're just going to talk about why what you're doing now for your diabetes isn't working and what will, and the science behind what actually causes diabetes. We're also going to talk about the difference between managing versus treating the underlying problem that's going on. So, we'll also talk about the keys to a proper diet if you want to end diabetes and other chronic diseases, and why your doctor probably hasn't mentioned this to you. Um, Also, why exercise should be a higher priority for you. Not that it has to be harder, but definitely higher. So my promise to you is that by the end of these 45 minutes, you will know these 5 keys in order to get your diabetes under control and finally kick to the curb for good. Because here's the deal. Most diabetics haven't been told that diabetes is reversible because most doctors are not informed that it is. Less than 1% of doctor medical training comes from nutrition, and the diet that you're taught to help manage rising blood sugar is actually hindering improvement in your diabetes. This diet that diabetics are put on often leads to higher numbers and more medication and more health problems. Diabetes reversal starts with a change in belief of what is possible, followed by serious action and the support of a coach or mentor for accountability and to make sure that you're on track. So I'm not here to pitch any sales or anything, but what I do want you to do is to pay really close attention and take notes, turn off all of your distractions, give this 100% of your attention, and really have an open mind because you are about to learn a lot of new things that you probably have not heard. So I'm wondering if this sounds familiar to you. You feel like after trying so hard for so long, you're not seeing changes in your blood sugar, and you just feel like giving up, or your diabetic medications make you feel horrible, you're sick of feeling gross and sick and lacking energy and being put on more medication. Maybe you're fed up with a diet that is not producing the desired results of improved numbers. You get extreme anxiety just thinking about what your numbers may be, or anytime you feel off as well, because You know, as diabetics, we all worry about those times we feel off and what our numbers might be. You worry that about the damage that's being done and what it might mean for your future. You feel like your diagnosis is just a slow death sentence. So if you're diabetic, you've probably thought, maybe if I just cut out all of the carbs or more carbs, or maybe I just need to have more discipline, maybe try a different medication, maybe hire a personal chef or personal trainer, then I can get my diabetes under control and get it reversed. But the truth is, it's not impossible to reverse diabetes long term. It's just that no one has shown you it is possible or the right way to do it. So once you expertly execute what I'm about to teach you, you will know the 5 keys you need to have in place in order to reverse your diabetes and all of the related complications. You'll be able to feel better and get off of your medication. So you'll no longer have to second guess what you should be doing to manage your diabetes, and you can actually tackle the root cause instead. You'll be excited to make these lifestyle changes because you'll be able to quickly see and feel the results. You'll finally be able to eat carbs again and not worry about what they do to your blood sugars. It will be like getting a raise when you can get rid of all of the diabetic related costs in your life. I mean, like the average cost of diabetes for someone who's diagnosed age 45 is about $130,000 and rising. What a savings that would be to get rid of diabetes for good, right? So here's what you need to know. Managing diabetes and blood glucose numbers are not the same as getting to the root cause and overcoming it. The current way diabetes is being managed is causing more harm long-term than actual good. You probably haven't heard any of this because it is the latest science, and it takes about 17 years before the latest science becomes the new normal in the medical field, as pathetic as that sounds. So I just want to introduce myself first, just back up the truck before we get too far. My name is Cindy Balling. I'm a former exercise specialist, which is really just a fancy way of saying that I used to make exercise programs for people with chronic diseases in a clinical setting. I'm also a certified plant-based nutritionist and a certified health and wellness coach, as well as a certified lifestyle medicine coach, specializing in type 2 diabetes remission and reversal of insulin resistance. Lifestyle medicine is a very new branch of the medical field, and it's based on getting to the root causes of chronic diseases using 7 really important pillars of health and well-being, and some of those we'll discuss today. But I wasn't always like this. I had high blood pressure in my teens and early 20s, and I was able to reverse that, which really started me on this passionate journey of helping others with their chronic diseases. But a few years ago, I had 3 grandparents die in less than a year and a half from diabetic complications, and that was really hard on me. I come from 4 generations of diabetics. Many of my aunts, uncles, and even cousins my own age have had major amputations. So I stood back one day and realized what was happening and where my life might end up if I didn't change something and if other people didn't change something. And I thought something has to be done. I didn't want to see my family suffering. And when I thought longer about it, I didn't want any other families to suffer from this either. It's such a horrible disease. So I focused on getting the best education on diabetes. I took classes specifically for doctors, getting the education to get the education I needed, because ironically, what I realized is that most doctors weren't getting this education themselves. they were only getting their continuing education on the latest medications that they could prescribe. And even though the information is definitely out there, no one is talking about it. So these 5 keys to reversing insulin resistance and staying away from a lifetime of chronic diseases aren't really being taught anywhere, but they are found all over in the science journals, all over. So key number 1 is to stop managing your diabetes and treat the root cause instead. It's essential to know the difference here and that you know the right steps to take to treat your diabetes rather than just managing it like you have been up to this point. Let me take a minute and explain the difference here between managing and treating. So, diabetes is a condition in which the blood sugar is unable to get into the cells in the body, so it just kind of hangs out in the blood and causes damage while it's there. Managing diabetes is all about keeping your blood sugar in range by eating only foods that don't cause major sugar spikes. The underlying problem is still there, but your focus is on the symptoms. Treating diabetes is about targeting what is preventing blood sugar from actually entering the cell and fixing that instead of focusing on just the blood sugar numbers. So I imagine it's like going to the doctor. And when you walk into his office, you're standing knee deep in water. The doctor hands you a bucket and tells you to throw bucket after bucket out the window until you clean up the mess. What he doesn't notice, however, is that the sink is on and overflowing. Now, you can tirelessly throw bucket after bucket after bucket out the window to manage these water levels, or you can walk over to the sink and turn it off, which makes more sense to you. So here's an important thing you need to know. People with diabetes are told to avoid carbs and get calories from fats. You cannot reverse diabetes if the focus of your diet is to only keep your numbers low. You just can't. In order to understand why, we need to address what's actually going on inside the cell. Glucose is used as fuel in the body, the entire body. In a normal cell, as you see here, glucose is brought to the cell by insulin. Insulin acts like a chaperone for glucose. It's basically the key that opens the door of the cell to allow glucose to enter. In a diabetic, there are 2 things going on that shouldn't be. The first is that insulin is not able to unlock the door because something is kind of gumming up the lock. So without the ability to open the door to let glucose in, that glucose has nowhere to go but to stay in the blood, which causes blood sugars to rise. What is gumming up that lock? Fat. The second thing going on is that even if insulin were able to open the lock, the cell is already full of fat. And there's literally no room for the glucose in the cell. So it has to hang out in the blood. It has no other choice. So from that very quick biology lesson, we know a few things. Number 1, eating carbs does not cause diabetes. Number 2, eating the diet that most diabetics use to manage their diabetes is only making the underlying problem worse and causes more problems in other parts of the body. This happens because with a low carb diet, you cause your fat intake to automatically go higher. And what is it that's keeping glucose from entering the cells? Fat, right? The third thing is if you continue to manage your diabetes, you will actually cause your body to become intolerant to carbs so that each time you eat them, you have an even more dramatic blood sugar spike. And number 4, by not getting to the root cause, you may find that even if you follow what your doctor or dietitian says to eat, you still end up with higher numbers and more meds, and higher numbers and more meds. You may even find that your doctor almost puts blame on you as if you aren't trying. Managing diabetes forces you to limit the most beneficial and health promoting foods on the planet because the most health promoting foods on the planet are naturally high in carbohydrates, whether it's fruit, vegetables, leafy greens, grains, legumes, beans, they're all high in carbohydrates. So when you get away from managing your diabetes and actually start to treat it, your body's own insulin will begin to work more efficiently. You'll begin to lose fat from your body, even if you are on meds that promote weight gain, like insulin. You'll begin to overcome other health conditions you may be dealing with. You will be able to lower your dependence on medication and eventually get off them for good. You'll find you will be able to, you'll find that your glucose levels are lower and easier to control. And you'll have more energy because you are fueling your body with more of the foods it was meant to use as fuel since before we evolved from monkeys, which happens to be carbohydrates. If you don't treat your diabetes and only manage it, your diabetes and complications will just continue to get worse. You'll be put on more medication, even if you are doing everything your doctor or dietitian says to do. Your risk of heart disease, stroke, death, dementia, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, so many different awful things, it's going to continue to rise. The risk will continue to rise. Diabetes will be a lifelong battle for you, and there is only so much more your pancreas can take before it actually decides to shut down. The science is there. We've known diabetes was reversible since at least 1979, when Dr. J.W. Anderson found through a very simple study that the diet used to manage diabetes was making the problem worse, not better. We know now, after decades of research, that the best, healthiest, and cheapest, and most efficient diet for reversing diabetes and so many other chronic diseases is a predominantly plant-based diet. But you may be wondering, what is a plant-based diet? It's a diet based on plants, as simple as that. The focus is on grains, legumes, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and limiting animal-based foods. People often get this idea in their heads that this means that be eating like a horse or only eating salads, but a plant-based diet is extremely versatile and delicious, and my clients find they really enjoy the food more than they thought they would. But here's where you might struggle with this. This is where my clients struggle. Your mindset about diet and food haven't changed yet, and it can be very difficult to know what to do in a world that is screaming out from all sides about what is right or what is wrong, especially in the world of food. You will still try to do this with the same diet you were educated is best for diabetics in the past. Maybe due to fear, maybe due to habit, maybe both. And you may not know how to make the transition from management to treatment due to this confusion and uncertainty. Managing diabetes and treating the underlying problem have contradicting steps and contradicting information, so it can be very confusing. Let me give you a glimpse of the difference with this story about Betty. Betty was a nurse with what we would call great glycemic control. But she was frustrated with weight. She felt nauseated all the time. And she figured she wouldn't see her grandkids grow up. She spent over $1,000 a month on her diabetes meds alone. After changing her lifestyle, she dropped 36 pounds and she got her A1C down to 5.5 and got off all of her medications. And when I say all medications, I don't mean just diabetes meds. I mean all medications. That is why treating diabetes versus just managing diabetes is so important. On to key number 2. Key number 2 is to cut out the fats. You know from the last few slides that fat is the cause of insulin resistance. And so it's vital to get that out of our lives so that we can get it out of our bodies. Fat is weighing you down, literally and figuratively. Now, it's not impossible to have diabetes without being overweight, but the problem is still the same. We have a genetic threshold that decides how much fat can sit in our fat cells before, before being stored elsewhere. And those who happen to be skinny and diabetic have a lower threshold than most. That's why people who are skinny become diabetic. It has nothing to do with anything else except how much fat your body can store genetically. Fat is important for our bodies, but when we have too much, our bodies still want to store it, but it has no place to go except places it shouldn't be. This is what leads to diabetes. Pre-diabetes means that your fat is starting to accumulate in your muscles rather than just your fat cells. That's pre-diabetes. Once you have a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, that means that it's moving into your organs, specifically your liver, and eventually it will also get into your pancreas. And if your pancreas has too much fat in it, it eventually shuts down, and then you are insulin dependent for the rest of your life. Fat causes more trouble with glycemic control than you have been told. We just talked about how it blocks glucose from entering the cell, but there is more going on psychologically with each high-fat meal that you eat that isn't always caught in blood glucose readings because of the timing we are told to check. When you eat fat, it usually takes longer to show up in your blood sugar. And only 11% of diabetics actually follow the accepted dietary guidelines for saturated fat, which is 6% of your total calories. If you think about the diet that most diabetics are put on, there is no way that they are staying at 6% of their total calories from fat, from saturated fat. It is impossible to treat diabetes without cutting out fat. I know that people say that they have reversed their diabetes by going lower and lower and lower carb, but all of the science says that those people who go into remission, they haven't gotten to the underlying problem, and about 5 to 10 years later, they will end up with diabetes again, and they will not be able to put it in remission again, because once it comes back, it is a beast to get rid of. So once you cut out the fat, you're going to help your body shed the excess fat that it already has. You'll be able to get your glucose numbers in better control. And you'll start to make progress in improving your insulin sensitivity. Inflammation will go down in your entire body. It's like your body is getting the medication it needs for the very first time. If you don't make this change, you'll continue to gain weight. Even if you have already lost weight, it will come back. You will have chronic inflammation. Your liver will continue to be unable to properly communicate with your pancreas about how much glucose to release into the blood, keeping your numbers high and hard to control. Your pancreas will become insulin resistant, like I said, and eventually it will lead to cell death and make you completely dependent on insulin for life. Your brain will also become insulin resistant. This is the latest research on dementia, that the things that cause insulin resistance in the rest of the body actually cause insulin resistance in the brain. And you can also get it without being diabetic, very similar to polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is insulin resistance in the ovaries. The same thing can happen in the brain. You can have it without having diabetes. So this was a study done back in 2004. So we have known for a few decades, at least, that free fatty acids in the body have a major impact on the cells of the pancreas that produce insulin. And no one knows when their pancreas will stop working. For some, it can be a few months after diagnosis. For some, it can be years. There's really no way of knowing for sure. This is a graph showing different levels of macros in eating and how it affects the blood glucose over time. So while most people are taking their glucose, at the 2-hour post-meal glucose check, and they see okay numbers, you can see that with a higher fat diet, which is the top 2 lines here, it keeps the glucose elevated for 4 or more hours. It really, because fat is slower to digest, it really can affect numbers and keep them higher and rising over time as well. So here's where you might get stuck with cutting out fat. The confusion out there about fats can be really difficult to manage. I mean, you've got your saturated fats versus your unsaturated fat. You have your essential fatty acids, your good and bad fats. There's the whole coconut oil argument, what low fat and reduced fat actually mean on packaging. It's a crazy world out there, a lot of information about fats. It's made even harder because fat is in everything, and it makes it difficult to know what to eat and what to avoid. I can't tell you how many times I have had people say to me, I don't eat that much fat. And then I take a look at their diet and they're surprised by what they find. With trying to stay low fat, protein will be your new go-to, and that isn't a good thing for you either. I could do a whole webinar series on protein itself and why high protein is not the best for your body. But you will try and focus on protein to keep your carbs low because you've been taught that carbs are bad. But all carbs are not created equal. And by cutting carbs, you're actually limiting some of the most beneficial and healthful promoting foods out there. Even if you cut out fat in your diet, losing fat from your fat cells, as most people do with weight loss, isn't the same as losing fat in muscle and organ cells, where diabetes comes from and where we find insulin resistance. If you want to reverse your diabetes, you must cut the fat out of your diet and out of your body. So let me tell you the story of Sandra. Sandra had been diabetic for 10 years. When Sandra found me, she had already cut out animal products from her diet, but she wasn't seeing much of a change in her health. And she was very hesitant to work with me for that reason. But her doctor put her on Ozempic, and she ended up with a side effect of Ozempic, which quickly and seriously affected her eyesight, because it can cause blindness in diabetics. Most people aren't aware of that. And she became very afraid for her future and where it was going. So after she started working with me, she was off all of her diabetic medication in 3 weeks because her fasting blood glucose was 94. Her eyes began to improve, and she was experiencing energy she had not experienced in years. She had not been active in the least, and she would go on walks around her neighborhood. She was just loving exercise and loving life and very energetic. She planted a garden. She was ecstatic about the results that she was seeing. Excuse me. The third key is to fix the glitch in the glycemic index. So the glycemic index is such an awesome tool for diabetics, but more than not, I find people using it ineffectively. The glycemic index is based on the change of a person's blood after eating 50 grams of a specific food. Now, usually the specific food, but it is these foods are compared to is sugar. That's kind of the control. White sugar is the control food. The glycemic index is not an end-all be-all for diabetics. When you put most of your food focus on the glycemic index, you actually end up limiting your nutrition. We almost never consume just 50 grams of a food. I mean, a chicken breast is 200 grams. So you have to be very careful. And if you aren't careful, the glycemic index can hold you back from reversing your diabetes. Looking at just the glycemic index can make you believe that some foods are harmful when they're actually very beneficial and only impact blood sugar slightly when eaten in normal amounts. Some foods with a high glycemic index may have a low carb content, and some of the unhealthiest foods have a low glycemic index. So when you change how you view the glycemic index, you feel empowered and have more freedom in what you eat. You learn how to compare foods properly, and you learn how combining certain foods can have a huge impact on lowering GI of other foods. If you continue to use the glycemic index the way that everyone else has been taught, you end up picking foods that are far more detrimental to your health than your actual glucose numbers. You will be stuck in the mindset of managing your diabetes rather than treating it. And you can develop carbohydrate intolerance in the cells throughout your body. Now, if you haven't heard of the glycemic load, it's about time you did. This is different from the glycemic index. The glycemic index measures how food affects the blood sugar, whereas the glycemic load measures the amount of carbohydrates in a food. This is done by taking the grams of carbohydrates per serving multiplied by the glycemic index of a given food and dividing it by 100. You know if something has a high glycemic index if it is 20 or higher. With a number between 11 and 19, it's moderate, and a number below 10 or below is low. So I just want to show you a couple examples of this before moving on. Watermelon. I don't know of many diabetics who eat watermelon like it's fine, like it's not a problem. Watermelon is high on the glycemic index at 72. But watermelon contains a lot of really helpful nutrients and phytochemicals. A 120 gram serving contains 9 servings of carbohydrates, which means that it has, not servings, 9 grams of carbohydrates, which means that it has a low glycemic load of 6.5 per serving if you do the math from the equation I just taught you. So it's really not a bad food for you. It's full of amazing things for your body. White rice. The thing about white rice is that it has 70 to 90% of all of its helpful vitamins and minerals removed. It has an even lower glycemic index than watermelon at 58. A serving contains 33.5 grams of carbohydrates, which, if you go through the formula, it ends up having a glycemic load of 19.4, which is right on the border of having a high glycemic load. So, if you focus only on the glycemic index, you're probably not eating correctly for your body. So, here's another thing though. The glycemic index and the glycemic load both have a few limitations, and they don't tell you how protective or damaging a food may be to your health. You need to learn to pair higher glycemic index foods and glycemic load foods with foods that are known to naturally lower blood sugar levels, such as kale or vinegar. If you fix the glitch in the glycemic index, you will be more empowered with what you eat and how you eat it to make reversal a reality. I just wanted to show you the difference these two keys make for my clients' meals. Whoa. This is the picture on the right is from my client when she was managing her diabetes. And the one on the left is treating diabetes. My clients go from eating these tiny meals, using portion control, counting calories, counting carbs, and checking the glycemic index, to eating until they're satisfied, eating when they want, and they love it. It still allows them to easily lose weight and keep their blood sugars in control. And they find that they really enjoy the food more than they ever thought they would. That's a lot of food, and I don't think that I can eat that much, but this client could. So I want to tell you about Michelle. Michelle is one of my clients. She was very frustrated. She had seen multiple nutritionists. Each one had given her a different kind of diet, and she said that it worked. She lost 7 pounds each time, and that's when it stopped working. And she gained the weight back, and her numbers, her blood sugar numbers kept rising, and she was just so frustrated. And so when she came to me, she told me that her doctor gave her a goal. Her numbers were so high, they were never under 200 ever. Her doctor gave her a goal of having one reading under 150, just one. And that was her goal starting about a year ago. And it just wasn't happening for her. She was constantly exhausted. She suffered from a lot of health issues as well. So when she came to me, she was off all medication in 12 weeks. And when I say all medication, I mean all medication. She was off her diabetic meds. She was off of the eye vitamin. She had been subscribed for retinopathy. She was off of her blood pressure medication. She healed from eczema that she had been dealing with her entire life. She didn't need fancy creams anymore. She warned me when we first started working together that she was allergic to everything. And all of her allergies just cleared up. She lost 20 pounds in those 12 weeks, and her A1C went from 8 to 6.3. She got rid of her lifelong struggle with eczema, like I said. She was able to walk again. She had had terrible plantar fasciitis and couldn't even walk down the street. And now she was going on hikes and walks, and just she had more energy than she had had in years. This is a quote from her that I love so much. She told me, "This has been life-changing. It has changed everything. I feel so good mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. It has changed everything in my life. I just feel so good. My whole outlook on life has changed, and this is only the beginning." So that's the story of Michelle. I love Michelle. Key number 4 is to get active. Now, you've heard this before, I know, but it really is an important key to reversing your diabetes, and here is why. Exercise can get glucose into the cell almost as effectively as insulin. No one ever tells you that, but that's what exercise can do. It lowers your A1C, it improves your energy, it can halt the progression of type 2 diabetes, and it helps improve a myriad of chronic diseases. I know, because that was my specialty for many years. There are some things you need to watch out for with exercise, though. Retinopathy, neuropathy, and kidney disease are special circumstances that need to be considered when you're exercising, as some of these activities can cause more harm than good. The glucose numbers you have before a bout of exercise can make a big impact on whether or not you should exercise. Some diabetic medications need special consideration because these medications can cause hypoglycemia during a bout of exercise. There's a lot of information there, but I probably scared you a bit. That's just the exercise specialist in me. So no stone unturned for me. It is important for diabetics to work with someone who understands diabetes if they plan to start an exercise program. But the reality is that even most personal trainers are unaware. They are trained on how to work with normal, healthy people. They aren't trained on how to work with people who have chronic disease. But what it comes down to, though, is that exercise is going to get you your diabetes reversed faster. But no one can outrun, outbike, outwalk a bad diet. That is the number one thing that needs to change to reverse your insulin resistance. So I want to tell you about Charles. Charles was diabetic for 20 plus years. He couldn't even remember how long. He was so tired of the way his metformin made him feel that he told his doctor he wasn't going to take it anymore. And she quickly put him on insulin for fear because of his numbers. And yeah, he obviously didn't like that either. He was just so tired of taking medication in general. So that's when Charles sought me out. In 14 weeks, he lowered his A1C from 8 to 5.5. During that time, he lost 30 pounds, and his fasting glucose went from 180 before working with me to 100 in a matter of weeks. Before working with me, he was taking 6 medications when we started. And at the end of those 14 weeks together, he was down to 1, which was a preventative medication. And his dose for that was drastically lower. Charles was ecstatic about the changes his body was making. He had his health back. We reversed not only his diabetes, but his high blood pressure and his high cholesterol. He improved his kidney function and heart function as well, according to his doctors. So he still to this day sticks to this diet. He makes fun of it, but he loves it, and he's never going to change. That's what he's told me. He's just so happy. Okay, so this brings us to key number 5, which is to invest in a coach. Because when you invest in a coach, it allows you to marry experience with accountability. It gives you that unique opportunity to hold the hand of someone who already knows the path. It's not easy to understand the ups and downs of blood sugar. There is a lot going on. And when you make major lifestyle changes, it's important to have someone who understands what's happening, someone else who's been there, who has seen it. You need someone in your corner for accountability. You need that expert guidance, a customized approach for you, some support and motivation, and someone who's there to really celebrate your success. Making lifestyle changes can be challenging, particularly when you're unsure of what to do or where to start. And a coach can provide that expert guidance and advice on how to achieve your goals. They can help you to set realistic goals and develop a plan and provide feedback on your progress. So it really is important to work with someone who knows what they're talking about. They help you track your progress and celebrate your successes along the way. This is another way to feel more motivated and energized to keep going. And they help you with maintaining results, because a lot of times when mindset becomes a big issue for some of my clients, because they've been going years fearing carbs, and then they come to me and their blood sugar is kind of wonky in the beginning, and they're really kind of second guessing what they were doing, but they feel so good at the same time. So they really need, my confidence and understanding. Excuse me. Um, so once you are making these lifestyle changes and you're starting to see those changes, it's essential to maintain your progress going over time. A coach can help you develop a plan to maintain your results and avoid falling back into those old habits that are so easy because of these mindset issues. But overall, a mentor or coach can provide invaluable support and guidance when making lifestyle changes that reverse diabetes. So in my time working with coaches and mentors, I found there's a difference between the good ones and the great ones. A good coach or mentor can help you navigate your path. They offer guidance and strategies. They keep you accountable. And when you bring something new to the plate they haven't seen before, they go and find the answer. That's what I love about great coaches. They also bring compassion and empathy and expertise, and they let you lead the way because no one else knows you better than you know yourself. These women are a few of my coaches and mentors over the years that each played a vital part in getting me to where I am now. I realize I would never have gotten from point A to point B without them in my life. But that's not to say that you can't go it alone. But if you try to go it alone, you might spend needless time trying to guess how to get this right. Your results will come slower, much slower. You will only be seeing from your perspective and not know what is missing. You will start listening to advice from any random person that looks like they're having success. You may even fall for, you might fall for every vitamin or supplement out there that's trying just to try and get an edge on your diabetes. And you may even lose belief that reversing diabetes is even possible for you. A coach is vital to making lifestyle changes that reverse disease and other chronic diseases and getting them into habits that form your thriving future. Coaches know the process. Okay, so today I promised you that I would tell you why what you are doing isn't working and what will, and the science behind what causes diabetes. I told you that I'd let you know the difference between managing versus treating the underlying condition. I would teach you keys to a proper diet if you want to end diabetes and other chronic diseases, why your doctor hasn't mentioned these to you, why exercise should be a higher priority for you. So here are those 5 keys, again, that you need to succeed at reversing diabetes. First of all, you have to stop managing it and actually treat the root cause. Second, cut out the fat. 3, fix the glitch in the glycemic index. Number 4, you need to get active. And you don't even have to do it all at the same time, just a little bit here and there. I mean, a little bit makes a big difference. Number 5 is to get a coach. If you implement these keys, you'll lower your A1C. You can be off those meds that make you feel horrible. You can lose weight even on insulin. You can improve your insulin sensitivity so that your insulin is taking charge rather than all of your medications. You can increase your energy, and you can get rid of diabetes, neuropathy, retinopathy, and other chronic diseases. Now you can either keep doing what you are doing, using meds to control your diabetes and stick to a diet that increases your risk for heart disease or diabetes complications and other chronic conditions, or you can try something new, something that's science-based that can rid you of your meds and your diabetes and your anxiety from all of it. That improves your overall health and increases your energy and makes weight loss effortless. I mean, effortless. If you want my support to help you reverse your diabetes, you can book a free 45-minute debate strategy call with me. Excuse me. There's a lot of talking. During this call, we're just going to find out where you are in your diabetes journey. We'll uncover what isn't working and why. I'm happy to give you some tips to help you improve your blood sugars right now. And if it seems like a good fit, I might invite you to be one of my clients I bring on this month in my DREAM course. That stands for Diabetes Reversal and Mindset. I'll go ahead and post the link in the comments section for you. Lots of you are watching this replay, so I'll just send you the link for that if you are interested, or you can contact me. Let's see. This program of mine, excuse me, is for pre-diabetics or type 2 diabetics who are ready to commit to a life of no more medication and finger sticks. I know that you are probably interested in making changes just because you decided you were interested in this webinar. And this is also for people who want to take responsibility of their health and not leave it up to just the doctors. They're for people who have a pancreas that makes substantial insulin. It's really easy to find out if your pancreas is still working. Even people who are put on insulin may have a great pancreas. Usually your doctor will tell you if your pancreas doesn't work anymore. So you can ask your doctor if you're unsure. You can also take what is called a C-peptide test, and this will tell you how much insulin your pancreas is able to push out, and how that compares and where your pancreas is at in that regard. And this program is also for those who resonated with my message and are willing to trust my expertise. This is not for people who make excuses or whine or complain or blame. It's not for people who are looking for someone else to do the work. It's not for those interested in fads or quick fixes or bandages that cover symptoms rather than real lifelong transformation. If that's what you want, stick to your meds. I won't judge. The reason that I'm doing this is because I want so badly to end diabetes for you, for everyone really, and to stop the upward trend of diabetes in our society. It's estimated that right now 1 in 3 people are pre-diabetic, and most of them don't know it. And that just breaks my heart because I see how much my own family has suffered from this, and I just want it to stop. If you want to have freedom from the emotional and physical pains that accompany a diabetes diagnosis, I mean, that's what I want from you. I want you to have that freedom, and I want to help you get the greatest impact on your diabetes as quickly and efficiently as possible. But most of all, I just want you to live the rest of your life free from diabetes, from medication, and be completely in charge of all aspects of your health. It's such a beautiful thing. So if you allow me to support you on your journey, I will teach you everything you need to know to lock in a future of vitality, energy, and empowerment through the latest in science. And when I say the latest in science, I don't just mean diabetes. I am constantly scouring all of the science out there. You'll also experience massive changes in your weight, your medication, and your insulin sensitivity. You will notice a change in your A1C in just the first month, and you would be held accountable to do the work that creates results, and you'll receive full support and feedback so that you're not trying to figure it out alone. I'm always very on top of my clients, and anything they need, I'm always there. So if you are interested in scheduling that diabetes strategy call, we can get you started with that. Um, I just wanted to end this with this quote from Dr. Josh Axe. He says, diabetes reversal is possible, and it starts with a decision to take control of your health. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an honor, really. I would love to hear from you about your thoughts on this webinar. Um, and if it was beneficial for you or if you learned something new, feel free to contact me and let me know. And I will talk to you really soon. Have a great night. Thank you. Thanks, Diane. Oh, you're muted. It's really weird. I wonder I never heard you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night. Do you have any?
Thank you.